Assalamu
alaikum, everyone. Good morning. We thank you for joining us for the fourth session of AlNukhba Program. Today's topic is ESG. It has become fundamental to how companies build long-term value, manage risk, and align with their global sustainability goals. And this session is delivered in partnership with Mazars Qatar and DCarbon Global. I'm very pleased to welcome our speaker today, Dr. Ehab Shalaby, who is the Chairman and CEO of DCarbon Global. Dr. Ehab is recognized as a sustainability and ESG expert with 20 years of experience in economic policy, climate strategy, and sustainable finance. He has advised governments, UN agencies, and multinational corporations and played a major role in shaping Egypt's Vision 2030, its low-emission development strategy, and the country's first carbon market. Dr. Ehab holds a PhD in sustainable development and has trained over 1,000 professionals across the industry on ESG integration, sustainability frameworks, and climate finance. Dr. Ehab, the floor is all yours.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum jami'an. Thank you so much, Suleiman. I'd like to extend first my thanks to Qatar Stock Exchange and AlNukhba Program and to your esteemed self for providing me this opportunity to engage with different companies here. I'd like also to thank all the participants from different companies who had been here today in order to get some insights about sustainability and climate change, environmental, social, and governance practices across the world. In fact, today we have 1 hour, and I believe that I'd like to enjoy it with you, talking about the topic, bringing my expertise to the table for 1 hour. After which I'd like to share with you and you to share with me your questions, engagements, comments, notes. I'll be very happy to receive them. To kickstart directly and quickly, I have reviewed the companies that are participating today. I have also reviewed some of the profiles of the persons who are participating today, because it's very difficult to approach sustainability unless you understand the type of the audience. In fact, sustainability means different things to different people. It means different things to different countries. It means different things to different sectors. And it also means different things to different functions inside the sectors. So this pushed me a little bit to run a background check on the companies who are participating, the sectors that they are representing, and the personnel that exists there. And despite the short time, to some extent, I worked on customizing some case studies that reflects how they can showcase how different sectors engage with sustainability in these respects. Starting the training directly, it's my pleasure to share with you. I think Suleiman has jumped in and done it khalas. Listen, I'd like to introduce myself with 3 hats. My first hat is that I'm a professor of economics of sustainability and climate change at the Maastricht University. This is the academic hat. My PhD is Economics and Sustainable Development from the Faculty of Economics and Political Science at the Free University of Berlin. My second hat is that, as Ms. Sultan Suleiman mentioned, I'm working as a policy advisor to a number of government and UN agencies, and also to regional financial institutions. My third hat, I'm an ESG board member at Vodafone Foundation. And I have worked with numerous sectors since 2010 in their transition plans on the 4 levels: on the government level, international organizations levels, on the regulators level, and on 12 different sectors level. As I mentioned, I have studied a little bit the profiles of the people who are attending today, the companies they are representing, and the sectors they are representing in order to be able to customize a little bit and very quickly a 1-hour knowledge bite, as I call it. It's a knowledge bite, and accordingly, we are open after this knowledge bite to receive all your questions, and I would be happy to answer them. About the knowledge bite that we are going to talk about today, I thought that I want to segment the 1 hour into 3 sections. The first section, I want to make sure that everyone understand the what. What is ESG? What is sustainability? What is climate change? I want to bring everybody to one boat and one understanding, a common understanding about the concept to make sure that we can sail safely. The second question that I will raise is about the why. Why ESG? Why should corporates and companies engage with the sustainability issues? What is the business case that exists there? How sustainability is important for investors, for lenders, how sustainability impacts risk and opportunity, how sustainability is becoming a compliance issue. So after understanding fully the why, I would shift to the fully the what, I would shift to the why. Third, which is a very logical sequence, is the how. If we understood the what and we captured the why, or we found the why reasonable for us, what about the how? What are the steps that we will need to move, how to walk through in order to establish, how to work on sustainability practices? In this context, I'm going to introduce you the major ESG frameworks that exists and how we utilize each of them, definitely in a very high level fashion. Finally, I will open the discussion and the engagement with the Q&A. So let's kick off the what. In fact, when I wanted to talk about the what, I wanted to reflect upon, start from your own experiences, start from a common point that we all agree on. For long, governments and countries have one objective to achieve, which is economic growth. Economic growth has been the flagship objective of all countries in the world. This is what they are seeking. This is how they build their policies, strategies upon, and this was the major and ultimate goal of all nations across the world. In order to be able to achieve these objectives, all nations developed a framework, and this framework is called the GDP, the Gross Domestic Product, a framework that assists us in measuring whether we are achieving economic growth or not. The takeaway from this slide is that when we all understand and agree on one objective, and when we all have a framework that can measure whether we are achieving this objective or not, then we succeed in doing so. We can see here that the world GDP has grown from less than 1 trillion in 1960 to more than 100 trillion in 2022. This is a success story by all means that has been achieved once the objective is clear and once the framework is there. Unfortunately, when we go back and see how growth rates was going, we can find in the last 30 to 40 years, we can find 2 dips. The first dip, as you all know it, in 2009, and this dip that impacted the GDP growth rate was mainly due to mainly a governance issue. It's a dip that has been caused by the financial crisis in the United States, and by reviewing this dip and by reviewing the regulatory approach towards what was happening, a governance issue was raised. A second dip happened in 2020, as we all know, a second dip which was related to social factors that impact our economic growth. The lesson learned, or the takeaway from this slide, is that despite we may be doing very good on the economic front, sometimes the governance front, the social front may impact our economic growth collectively and separately. Hopefully the third dip will not be from an environmental perspective. This is Qatar GDP growth rates in the last 10 to 15 years. In fact, Qatar has been doing well in the last 3 years, starting 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023. So on the macro level, GDP has been the ultimate objectives globally and on the country's level, and it has been also measured globally utilizing a gross domestic product framework. Okay. On the micro level, corporations like yours has a very different objective. Corporations like yours has been established for a very clear specific objective, which is to achieve profits, the bottom line. All of the companies, the corporate strategies, policies, and operational business models are built mainly to achieve profits. So we all agree that profits and the bottom line is the major objective of companies. And in order to know whether we are achieving profits or not, we needed frameworks. And if financial practitioner here remember the old days where we have tens of frameworks where we can measure whether we are achieving profits or not. Today, it ended up having two frameworks, the IFRS, International Financial Reporting Standard, and the generally accepted accounting principle as two major frameworks utilized in order to measure whether we are working on the right track and achieving the bottom line or not. So as much as GDP on the macro level was the major issue, profitability and the bottom line on the micro level became the major issue. Did we succeed? In fact, yes. Most of the world companies has succeeded in achieving profits, and the size of the global GDP has been impacted so much by the micro level growth that happened into corporations and corporations' profitability. So we all agree that on the economic front we have done well. Unfortunately, on the social front, there have been some problems. On the social front, as you can see, since the beginning of times and until 1975, the global population reached 4 billion. From 1975 until today, global population doubled. So global population doubled in the last 50 years alone. This put a lot of pressure on resources. One of the repercussions of this issue was the distribution of wealth and income globally, where 50% of the world population is only receiving 8.5% of the world income and only 2% of the world wealth. While 52%, the top 10% of the world population is receiving 52% of its income and receiving 76% of its wealth. There is clearly an inequality in the distribution of both wealth and income that are increasing globally and that are causing social unrests in many of the world countries. A third social issue that are facing a lot of countries globally and that in fact Qatar is doing very well in is the corruption index. So another social or socio-economic issue, our challenge that are facing the world now is the corruption index. And as you can see, our region is not doing very well, despite that Qatar is leading the region into the Transparency International. And it's scored 30 out of 198 countries globally. Beside the social issues, we have some environmental issues. And on the top of the environmental issues, we have a very big problem called the greenhouse gas emissions problem, which causes climate change. This greenhouse gas emissions problem is the result of the emission of 7 gases. And these 7 gases are generated during economic activities across the value chain. The problem with greenhouse gas emissions is that when greenhouse gas emissions increase in the atmosphere, they prevent the sunlight from, they allow sunlight to penetrate the earth, but they prevent the sunlight from leaving, or sun heat, in fact, to leave planet Earth. This leads to the creation of a glass house and accordingly into disruption into our atmosphere and into disruption into the temperature across global countries. There has been a clear evidence that there is a correlation between greenhouse gas emissions and global warming. And this causes a lot of problems, not only to the environment, but also come into the business dimension. that we have. As you can see in this slide, what are the major sources of greenhouse gas emissions? You can see energy use in industry is the major emitter, agriculture and land use due to the CH4 emissions, energy use in buildings, transport, fuels, industry, and waste. I think each one of you can resonate to his industry and whether he is contributing to greenhouse gas emissions and under which scope. Due to the social challenges and the environmental challenges, we needed to do some sort of a paradigm shift. And the paradigm shift happened through the development of that we need to move from economic dimension of development to sustainable development. With sustainable development, we need to integrate the environmental dimension, the social dimension beside the economic dimension. And on the company front, or the corporate front, corporates are no more responsible only for profit, but corporates needs to understand their economic, environmental, social, and governance impacts and reflect on how they are managing these impacts positively and negatively. For this paradigm shift to take place, a complete system architecture worked on the transition. So we can see a transition roadmap here that started by that we have two global agreements. One is the Sustainable Development Goals, 17 goals that needs to be achieved by all of the world countries by 2030. If you can see these 17 goals, the first row of 6 goals are all social goals. We want to end poverty, we want to reach zero hunger, we want good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, and clean water. Some of the sectors that are attending today are already addressing this or have impact on these dimensions. The second row is related to the economic dimension of sustainable development. Affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry innovation, reduced inequality, sustainable cities, responsible consumption and production. So this is the economic dimension. And then the environmental dimension, climate action, life below water, life on land, and then one governance goal, which is peace and justice and partnership for achieving these goals. Goal number 13 in particular has been segregated and have been put under a Paris Agreement and the IPCC, and it becomes obligatory on all countries because climate change, GHG emission may be produced by one country, but it affects the whole globe. So globally, we have 2 agreements that we are signatories of. Each of our companies are impacting both the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, and the climate goal. From the globe, while globally we all signed this agreement, regionally all of the world, all of the regions country have developed their own national plans. So in Egypt we have 2030, in Kuwait, in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, in Saudi Arabia, definitely in Qatar, in Bahrain, and in Oman. And the region has hosted 2 conferences of parties, 2 COPs, one in Egypt, COP27, and one in the UAE, COP28, which reflects that the region is moving strongly towards achieving sustainable development. Let's see what Qatar has done in this realm with a leadership mandate that has been very clear and decisive on the issue. Qatar started working on developing its own national vision 2030 for sustainable development, and also has set some targets on itself in a nationally determined contribution. So now we can say that Qatar has a sustainability strategy and has a climate strategy. How can it achieve both strategies? It developed the 3rd National Development Strategy, and the 3rd National Development Strategy of Qatar is building our sustainable future and includes sustainability across different pillars. And then after it went into implementation through the development of the national strategy, Qatar moved towards monitoring and reporting its achievements. And it has 2 reports. One is called the VNR, Qatar Voluntary National Review Report, that shows how Qatar is achieving this sustainable development. And it has also another report on its impact on climate change and GHG emissions. This has been dictating the 3rd financial sector strategic plan. So The third national development strategy to be achieved needed a financial sector strategy. And as you can see, the financial sector strategy that has been formulated by Qatar Central Bank has an ESG and sustainability pillar that are cross-cutting all of the pillars there. We can also see other regulators such as Qatar Financial Center Regulatory Authority developing guidance on corporate sustainability reporting, and we will discuss this now. And we can see Qatar Stock Exchange in collaboration with the Nukhba Program are pushing companies and how are educating companies on how to integrate sustainability and climate change into their practices and into their reporting. This is a very high-level background that we can conclude from is two major conclusions. The first conclusion is that sustainability is not a hug. Sustainability is a systematic architected transformation that are happening on the global level, on the regional level, on the national level, on the sectoral level, and it will take into account the corporate level. This is number one. It's here to stay, and it's not a hug. The second thing, those who will catch up this movement early, as we can see, as we will see in some examples, will definitely have the first advantage of the first mover. Accordingly, while this movement is happening on the global, regional, national, and regulatory level, the question that now should appear in the heads of the audience is, why should my company join this movement? Why should my company analyze its economic, social, and environmental impacts positively and negatively? And why should my company, in this respect, report on these impacts and set targets on these impacts? Why should I engage into this movement? What is the impact of this movement, of this action on my bottom line? So the second very normal question that should appear in mind is why, and what is the business case? In fact, the business case behind the transition towards being a sustainable company are two main folds. There are two philosophies behind the transition. The first is what we can call the ethical idealistic transition. I want to be a sustainable company because I want to do no harm to the environment or the society. But there is another approach that is growing radically, which is the realistic approach. I want to integrate environmental and social factors because we now understand that environmental and social factors may carry a lot of opportunities and also a lot of risks. So we want to identify what are the opportunities and the risks on the bottom line that can come out of this direction. So here are the list of whys. This is why this is the business case of why companies across the world are joining the sustainability movement. Number one is investments. Yes, being more ESG compliant open up new investment opportunities for all companies. Second is borrowing. Also, it facilitates the access to funds and the cost of funding. Third is rating and ranking. Companies that are ESG rated and ranked receives better investment opportunities and better funding opportunities. Reputation. Sometimes the issue is a reputational issue. Leadership. Many countries, as we mentioned, is moving from an ethical dimension, and accordingly, as a leader, it is adopting sustainability. Operating costs. Understanding your environmental and social impact definitely reduce your operating cost. Compliance, as we can see, the whole world is moving towards adopting sustainability. And finally, ESG risks and opportunities and revenues. I will give a small hint on our case on each of the following, on each of these business cases in order to see some insights and reflect on what could be our why. And please, by the end of this session, I will ask the audience from my side, what do you think your why is? Identifying your why is very important because each why will dictate its own how. Accordingly, you need to understand why and whether you are adopting sustainability and climate practices into your business models or not, depending on these whys. The why is very important. And as I mentioned, each why will have a very different how that we will discuss afterwards. Let's have the why. Investments. as we are speaking today, more than 31 trillion US dollar is allocated as ESG investments globally. Because ESG investment is increasing by 16.5% annually. This means by 2030 to 2035, more than two-thirds of the global investments will be tagged as ESG investments. This means that the companies will need to comply with the ESG issues in order to receive these investments. This is on one hand. On the second hand, and which is very important, in a study that was conducted by BlackRock, we can see here that during COVID-19, while conventional investments retarded during the COVID-19, green investment continued to be rising in the same periods. This means that ESG investment is not only increasing, but also it is resilient to uncertainties and resilient to challenges that are facing investments globally. Why investors demand sustainability information? In fact, investors are demanding sustainability information because it boosts performance. Studies show that sustainability leaders outperform peers in stock returns and profitability. Another reason is that it reduces risks and volatility. ESG data help predict and mitigate different volatilities. Top ESG firms show significantly lower EPS volatility and bankruptcy risks. Third, proven financial value. 90% of the studies that has been conducted confirms a positive and a neutral link between ESG performance and financial results. Sustainability enhances, not hinder returns. Let's have a case study from Qatar Stock Exchange. From Qatar Stock Exchange, we can see here that, from Qatar, we can see here that Qatar and the UK agree on a 1 billion green investment deal. So Qatar, in fact, moved on taking the advantage of investments. Second, Qatar Investment Authority. Qatar Investment Authority has a sustainable investment strategy that is working on. She is working on. Third, borrowing. As you can see, ESG borrowing and green borrowing are increasing. Green bonds are increasing tremendously in the region, either on the sovereign level or on the corporate level. Here, Qatar 2.5 billion green bond fund enhances renewable energy and infrastructure. Also, QNB, as an example, issued its first green bond with the EBRD, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and starting utilizing the money in developing or offering green loans at low fund and definitely receiving a low fund costs can transmit these benefits to a number of clients. A third, as we mentioned, is rating and ranking. Rating and ranking is also very important in these contexts. Many of the organizations that exist in Qatar is rated and ranked across different indices. So globally, in the region, global rating agencies such as S&P Global, Sustainalytics, and MSCI is receiving a huge attention in these respects. And in the region, they are both in the region and in Qatar, they are working on rating companies from an ESG perspective. So we can see here that, for example, this is Qatar National Bank rating, where on an ESG risk rating is a medium risk, which is a very good score, in fact, not only nationally, but also regionally and globally. A next reason why people are engaging into the ESG file is compliance. In fact, sustainability regulation is increasing tremendously across the world. Maybe after the Trump administration has been in place, it has been retarding a little bit in the United States of America, but in other regions of the world, it is in fact increasing dramatically. ESG risks and the business case of ESG risks. In fact, ESG risks that are identified by the World Economic Forum annual global risk reports has showed that the first 5 risks that will face the world the next year are environmental risks. So it's no more economic risks, it's more of environmental and maybe geopolitical risks. So environmental, social, and governance risks are in fact increasing a lot. This is a very clear business case of how an issue like climate change may impact the bottom line. A global temperature increase leads to increased weather events. Increasing weather events leads to resource scarcity, increased power outage, risk of public health and disease spread. All these leads to disruption in supply chain, weakened production capacity, and more deaths. All this leads to increased capital and operational cost, reduced demands on goods and service, and finally, this lead to impact on business. Let's take this theoretical model into practical application. Qatar Ministry of Labor are calling businesses to take urgent steps to protect their employees due to extreme weather conditions. This is an ESG risk. This is an environmental risk that are impacting the bottom line without us being aware how it impacts the bottom line, how it impacts the bottom line, and how much it impacts the bottom line. Including that, according to Science Direct papers, warm-induced increase in power demand to CO2 emission in Qatar and Middle East. We are expecting more heat waves in Qatar and the Middle East. Type. What is the relationship between these types of environmental, social, and governance risks, and how can we draw a link between these types of risks and credit risks, market risk, liquidity risk, compliance risk, operational risk, reputational risk, and strategic risks? Each company needs to develop its own heat map, and these heat maps needs to be working very closely with the strategic management in order to identify what are the implications of these different risks. Right. Let's take a case study. This is a case study that we have developed with the World Cement Association in order to identify how environmental risks, and in particular climate change, we selected one risk, which is climate change, impacts the balance sheet, the income statements, and the cash flow. So let's take one example, chronic heat waves, for example. Chronic heat waves will lead to heat stress affecting work rate. This is the exact case that we talked about in Qatar right now. Type, what are the regional level? Is this risk low or medium or high? On the national level, is this risk low or medium or high? And on the sectoral level, is this risk low or medium or high? So here we do some sort of risk scoring. After that, we show the implication of this risk on the different financial statements. So we identify through this exercise a list of risks that will face this industry. So increased prices of greenhouse gas emission through carbon taxes globally is a risk that is facing the cement industry. Increase in energy prices is another risk. Carbon taxes, carbon capture technology, stigmatization of the sector, increased stakeholder concerns, uncertainty in market segments. All those are risks that appears in the industry from the climate change perspective. Type. But also there are some opportunities that appear because in working on these risks, beforehand may lead to utilization or capturing some opportunities, such as recycling, then utilization of wastes, use efficient modes of transportation, less CO2 emission, increase energy efficiency, and so on. So identifying, understanding environmental, social risks and governance risks, and reflecting those risks on the financial statement is something of paramount importance, because nowadays investors are asking for these data and information. Number one, what are the material issues from an environmental, social, and governance perspective that may have an impact on our bottom line? Second, what kind of impact do they have? Third, and most importantly, what are the channels of communications? Accordingly, identifying these risks and opportunities is becoming of paramount importance and will be included into the financial statement very soon. Now, after having a very high-level picture about what is sustainability and climate change, what is ESG, and that now companies need to integrate environment and understand not only the profitability dimension or the economic dimension, or the financial dimension, but they need also to understand what kind of environmental, social, and governance impact do they have on the economy and the society, and what kind also of risks and opportunities does the transition that are happening in the economy or the society is impacting them. So this is what is sustainability. And then why should companies engage? Because of investments, because of borrowing, because of compliance, because of several different factors. The question that arose directly afterwards is how can we move into developing, and what are the phases and the steps that are required to move into adopting this transition in our companies. That simply and shortly, the process passes through the following phases. The first phase is to run a diagnostic review. It is like a scan, a checkup on the company. This checkup, and I will show you how this checkup is conducted now. This checkup on the company identify a number of issues, and then these issues are transferred into questions that seeks answers across different departments. Accordingly, for the first issue that we work on always is to develop this diagnostic review, to develop a framework, a company framework, a company ESG framework. And through this company ESG framework, we now understand what are the main issues that are facing these countries, what are the main impacts that this company is causing, and what are the main risks that this company may be facing. This is the ESG diagnostic review. After understanding the current situation of the company, we start working on back-end research on benchmarking. We benchmark this current situation with regulatory requirement. We benchmark it with peers. We benchmark it with international and national regulations, and so on. So while we are now having an ESG diagnostic review, we have the situation analysis of the company, and we have the benchmark, we can clearly develop what is called an ESG gap analysis. This ESG gap analysis will be transferred into an ESG strategy that are built in a bottom-up fashion and reflects the real material issues of the company that it works to work on. After that, we set the policies, the governance structure, we develop capacity building to the employees, and then we develop the sustainability and climate reports type. All of these steps are related to, are more of a do-how rather than a know-how. Only the first step is the major step that includes a lot of know-how, because in the first step, you develop your materiality matrix, you develop your material issues. And let's have an example. In order to develop the first step, which is the diagnostic review, we need to use ESG frameworks. As you can see, we are living in a mess of frameworks. Frameworks are increasingly taking place since 1979. But fortunately, among all these frameworks, we have two main frameworks that are guiding us. The first framework is the GRI framework, the Global Reporting Initiative framework, and the second framework is the IFRS new S1 and S2 sustainability framework. If we talked about the GRI framework, the Global Reporting Initiative, this framework is responsible more or less to measure the impacts that the company has from an economic, social, and environmental dimension on the society and the economy at large. While the IFRS is moving in the other direction. The IFRS is working on what kind of economic, social, and environmental changes that are happening in the society, how the economy, and that may have impacts in terms of risks or opportunities on the company. So these two frameworks are complementing each other. One is a sustainability framework, the second is a financial framework, and both frameworks are now merging in order to complement each other. As we can see, now investors are asking that beside the financial information provided, we need you starting 2027 to provide us with non-financial information, which are related to environmental, social, and governance factors. This is the GRI framework, and the GRI framework has a very simple and beautiful and elegant way in working. The universal standard, which is the first standard under the GRI, is working on assisting companies into identifying what are their material issues, what are their ESG impacts. So it assists you into understanding and identifying your impacts. The second section is the sector standard. After you identified your impacts, you compare it with your sector. So each of the GRI 11, 12, 13, 14 are sector standards. So 11 is oil and gas, 12 is coal, 13 is agriculture, and so on. So after you finish doing your exercise, identifying your material issues, you secondly go to the sector standard and see to what extent these material issues are matching the standard there. If the standard includes more material issues, then you need to include them into your assessments. After having the full list of the material issues, utilizing the universal and the sector standard, what should you write on each of these issues and what you should calculate on each of these issues you can find in the topic standards. So for example, if climate change is one of your impacts on the economy and the society, then you can go to the GRI 201, which is working 201 or 301 or 401, and select climate change. And under the climate change, you will find all the questions and answers required that you need to work on in order to reach the, in order to communicate your impact in an informed manner. Second, and the second standard is the IFRS S1 and S2 standards. IFRS S1 and S2 standards are standards that are doing the opposite way around. They are very, very, very cautious about identifying risks and opportunities of E and S and G on the company itself, and not the impact of the company, but rather the risks and the opportunities that the company may pursue due to the transition that are happening in the economy. The IFRS, as I mentioned, I have reviewed your companies, and I wanted to show you what sort of ESG issues across different sectors. Some of the audience are working in agricultural products, for example. So according to the IFRS, they will be required to report not only on financial information, but on ESG information that the IFRS believe has huge implications on the bottom line of these companies. So in the agriculture sector, what kind of ESG issues may have these huge implications? They have developed a matrix. Greenhouse gas emissions has implications on your bottom line, or future bottom line, energy management, water management, food safety, among others. What is required now from companies, what will be required from companies starting the next year, is that in their financial statement, they will be required to report on these issues and similar types of ESG issues. This is by way of sample to the agriculture sector. Why we believe that these issues are important? Because the investors believe that these issues have implications on the bottom line, despite that they are environmental and social and governance issues. Let's move to another sector and see. In the similar sector, also you want information on the workforce health and safety, on the environmental social impact, ingredient supply chain. We want your GMO management system, and we want the ingredient sourcing. So these are issues that we want to make sure that the company is taking care of. We want it to measure it utilizing different metrics, and we want to see what is the management approach that the company is doing, the management, and how the company is managing these issues. Let's move to the advertising and media and marketing section. We also have a company that is working in advertising. What kind of ESG issues does SASB and the IFRS identified as very important as an ESG risk, from an ESG risk and opportunity perspective? In fact, definitely data privacy is something that is very important, advertising integrity, workforce diversity and inclusion, and median reach of advertisement and marketing campaigns. We want also to know the number of exposure to advertisement or marketing campaign and the median frequency of exposure. This is new kind of data sets and data infrastructure that needs to be developed in order to be reported. Otherwise, we will be facing risks that we are not seeing, and we also will be facing problems with financial reportings in the future. Moving to the real estate services. and by the real estate services هنا, I have reviewed the profile of the companies that are participating, and I found that one of them is working into property management. And accordingly, I selected the real estate services and property management. And it was interesting for me to know that they are asked about so many numerous ESG data sets. But from these data sets is sustainability services, revenue from energy and sustainability services. So they are turning it into an opportunity, in fact, and floor area and number of buildings under management provided with energy and sustainable services, floor area or number of buildings under management that obtained an energy rating also, brokerage revenue from dual agency transactions, revenue from transactions associated with appraisal services. These type of data will be required by investment funds or real estate companies or property management companies to provide if they are seeking investment, if they are seeking borrowing, if they are working with big guys in the value chain, our big brands in the value chain, because being a part of the value chain will put on you similar pressures that they are facing either in the European Union or elsewhere in the world. Metals and mining. What kind of ESG issues I want to know about in your coming financial statements? I'd like to know your greenhouse gas emissions, your air quality, your energy management, your water management, among others. Oil and gas services, again, emission reduction, water management services, chemical management, ecological impact management, workforce health and safety. Refining. One of the companies were working into petrochemical industries, and here are the issues that we want to know about the petrochemical, particularly hazardous material management, the amount of hazardous waste generated, percentage recycled, number of underground storage tanks, or number of UST releases requiring cleanup. So now investors have very clear and precise understanding about where the opportunities and the risks are coming from, and they want each and every company to report on how they measure these issues, and also how do they manage these issues. Type apparel, accessories, and footwear. One of the companies working here is working into the area of distribution, retail distribution, and accordingly, in the retail distribution, we want you to consider this kind of data. Whether these data are available for you, or you will need also to provide it from another data provider in the value chain, is something that falls within your responsibility. So we want to understand about the management of chemicals in the product, environmental impacts in the supply chain, labor condition, and raw material sourcing. IT, because one of the companies here was working on a payment gateway. As a payment gateway, do you understand what is the environmental footprint of the hardware infrastructure that you are utilizing? What kind of data privacy and freedom of expression management system do you have in place? What about data security? All of these issues have fundamental risk, could be a fundamental risk or an opportunity for companies working in this field also. This has been a very quick round that I wanted to reflect on what is sustainability, very simply and shortly and high level, and why companies engage into sustainability, and then moving to how do we engage, how can frameworks utilize us into engaging into sustainability. To sum the long story short, sustainability is a systematic architected transformation that are taking place on all levels. So it will happen. And you will need to figure your place among this transition. It's happening on the global, national, regional, and corporate level, and regulatory level. So this is the first fact. The second fact that is very important is that you need to identify and understand how you will position yourself from this transition, what kind of pace you need to run the transition with, And what are the reasons that you are doing this transition for? Because different reasons are very important into identifying the roadmap that you will go through. This is number one. Number two, also different reasons will identify the pace through which you may go through. So this is important. So the why is very, very important. And then comes the how. And the how carries a lot of challenges. There are challenges that are related to data and data infrastructure. There are also challenges that are related more or less to awareness raising, understanding, capacity building. There are other data related to the silos issue, because most companies, unfortunately, big ones, are facing the problem of working in silos. And the sustainability file is requiring more of coordination and collaboration between different departments and between different stakeholders. So this has been a very quick knowledge bite in something like 50 minutes, and we still have 10 minutes if anybody have a question. Thank you so much for your attention, and thank you so much for being here, and looking forward to have any inquiries, questions. I'll be very happy to hear it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ehab, for that refreshing session and taking us on the ESG journey and why it's important for companies to start thinking and considering this important topic. I have a couple of questions until unless anyone has any questions. So my first question, Dr. Ehab, is on rating agencies. So how, like, if I'm a company, once I'm listed, is there like specific rating agencies? If you can shed some light on that. And my second question is on a lot of companies, let's say in Qatar here, they deal with international suppliers outside of a country when importing raw material, for example, or some goods. So how can they track their supply chain when it comes to I mean, can they do it supposing the data is not there? So what are things that company that can come around this issue?
Thank you, Sunay, for both questions. And let me start by the first question concerning rating agencies. In fact, rating agencies that are working and that are active in the region are many, but in fact, there are two major rating agencies that everybody is looking for. The first is MSCI, and the second is Sustainalytics. The difference between MSCI and Sustainalytics in the primary place is that Sustainalytics is working on ESG risks. So it is evaluating your performance from a risk perspective only, not from an impact perspective. While MSCI is evaluating you from an impact perspective. So it is showing what kind of impact do you have. This is concerning the rating agencies. What they are doing exactly, they are utilizing the publicly available information from sustainability reports and other reports that are published everywhere in order to score you and rate you. And if you have a complaint, you can communicate them, and they will tell you upgrade your public disclosure on your ESG performance, and then you can join another time. This is number one. A second issue is that the rating report that comes out of MSCI and Sustainalytics will impact the investor's preview in your performance. So when investors ask about to invest in companies in the region, he always asks this rating agency to bring him the best in class. And the best in class, to be the best in class, you need to work a lot on sustainability in order to reach good scores, or at least low risk scores. So this is concerning the risk and the rating agencies. Second is and most importantly, come on beside the rating agency, second is concerning the data issue. Definitely, we need data. We all request data, but the problem with data is that we want data from cradle to grave. We want it across the full life cycle of the products. And to have the data across the full life cycle, we need to understand the whole value chain. And that's why there is a number of organizations that are existing globally now to provide you with specific data in the value chain. So the biggest organization that exists globally is called EcoInvent, and EcoInvent provide you only data on climate emissions. So it's a very specialized organization, but it provides you data across the whole supply chain cycle. Also, we have another data providers, agencies, the rating agencies or data providers that assist us by providing us by buying or by selling these data to us in order to be able, because when you calculate your, for example, climate emissions, it's not, you are not responsible only for your operational emissions under your control. You are responsible also for all of scope 1, 2, and 3 that may comes either as an upstream or a downstream emission that is not under your control. Accordingly, this is becoming a big hassle, in fact, and data providers are doing very good now in terms of data and collection, data infrastructure building, data collection, data assessment, and fortunately, data is becoming a product that is being sold to different organizations.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Yeah.
Allow me, Sulaiman, to ask you a question. Okay.
Yes.
Let me ask you the question this way: how do you differentiate between the listed companies and the newly seeking companies that wants to be listed in terms of the ESG file? Do you see that there is a difference in the في التناول يعني أو, and what would you like to communicate with them?
I think it's this is more a perception on the investors. So if you look at the MSCI ESG Qatar Index, which was a collaboration between MSCI and Qatar Stock Exchange, versus the QE normal index, I think investors we do see an outperformance on the index. So it does outperform the normal QE index. So there is preference by investors. This is related to the pre-list or post-listing environment. From a post-listing and or pre-listing environment, I think a lot of investors, as you said, like global hedge funds, institutional investors, do look at the ratings, do look at the sustainability initiatives done before taking an investment decision. I think the world's biggest hedge fund, which is the Norwegian fund, does only invest in companies that disclose their ESG reporting. Otherwise, they will not invest. So this is what I have from my side on ESG, and I'm not an expert like you, Doctor.
So do we have any questions from the floor?
I don't think we have any more questions. Thank you again, Dr. Ehab, for that session. Thank you everyone for joining us. I would like to remind you that a recording of the session will be available and will be published. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow, same time, where we will be covering a topic on investor relations and disclosure. Thank you all and have a good day.